Hey everyone, before we begin today's intense story, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It helps the channel grow and brings you more compelling stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice. Thank you for your support. Now, let's dive in. The rain hammered against the windows of our Copenhagen apartment, each drop a tiny fist demanding entry into our suffocating silence. Safi stood by the kitchen counter, her phone glowing in her hand like a secret she no longer bothered to hide. Her laughter, that dismissive, cutting sound I'd once found charming, echoed off the minimalist Danish furniture we'd chosen together 3 years ago. "I absolutely won't cut ties with my ex just because you ask me to," she said, not even looking up from her screen. "You're being insecure, Thomas. It's exhausting." I watched my wife of 4 years. This woman I'd moved from Aarhus to Copenhagen for. This woman I'd supported through her architecture degree while working double shifts at the shipping company. And I felt something inside me finally calcify into cold, deliberate purpose. "His name appears on your phone more than mine does," I said quietly. "Jacob and I have history. We're friends. Adult friends who've moved past our relationship." She finally met my eyes, hers filled with condescension that made my stomach turn. "You wouldn't understand. You've never maintained a meaningful connection with anyone from your past, because I burned bridges when they became toxic," I thought. "Because I understood boundaries? He texts you at midnight, Safi. He calls during dinner. Oh my God, stop." She set her phone down with theatrical exasperation. "This paranoid jealousy is exactly why my mother said you weren't ready for marriage. You're still that insecure boy from Jutland who thinks Copenhagen is too big, too sophisticated, too much for him." The contempt in her voice was surgical, precise. Her mother, Birgit, had never approved of Mitha, working-class son of a fisherman, marrying her architect daughter. But Safi had sworn it didn't matter. She'd sworn love transcended class, that her family's old money and connections meant nothing compared to what we had. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Safi's turned back, listening to her breath, and made a decision that would require patience, precision, and a willingness to become someone I'd never imagined being. The next morning, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of messages, recordings of phone calls I legally captured using Denmark's one-party consent laws. I watched as Jacob's name appeared constantly lunch invitations. Reminiscences about their trips to Bornholm, inside jokes that excluded me from my own marriage, but I needed more than evidence of emotional infidelity. I needed leverage, through a contact at work, a woman named Hel who owed me a favor after. I'd covered for her during her divorce. I learned that Jacob Lindholm wasn't just Sophie's ex-boyfriend. He was a commercial real estate developer whose current project, a massive waterfront renovation in Nordhavn, was financed through questionable loans from his family's investment firm. Money laundering, Hel suggested. Nothing proven, but whispers existed among financial regulators. I spent 3 months becoming invisible in my own home. I agreed to Safi's demands, stopped questioning her late nights working on presentations, stopped mentioning Jacob's name. She interpreted my silence as defeat, which made her careless. She started meeting Jacob openly, posting photos on Instagram of business lunches where their body language screamed intimacy. Her family's annual summer gathering in Skyon arrived in July. The coastal town glowed with midnight sun, its yellow houses and windswept beaches postcard perfect. Birgit had rented a sprawling summer home, and all of Safi's relatives descended her banker brother. Her lawyer sister, her industrialist uncles, all people who'd looked through me like I was furniture. Jacoba was invited, naturally, as a family friend, Safi explained. Not meeting my eyes, I watched them together on the beach, laughing as waves crashed against the white sand. Watched Jacob's hand linger on her waist. Watched my wife transform into someone luminous and alive in ways she never was with me anymore. That evening, during the elaborate dinner Birgit had catered, I made my first move. "I've been thinking," I announced during dessert, my voice cutting through the ambient conversation, "about the Nordhavn project. Fascinating development, Jacob. Very ambitious financing structure." The table went quiet. Jacob's smile faltered. You follow real estate development, Thomas. I follow patterns, I said mildly, spooning into my Radgrad Medflied. My company ships a lot of construction materials. We see things. Unusual payment flows, shell companies with Cayman addresses. The kind of things that make auditors curious. Safi's hand gripped her wine glass until her knuckles whitened. Burgett's expression sharpened with predatory interest. She sensed conflict. Opportunity. That's quite an accusation, Jacob said, his aristocratic composure slipping. Not an accusation, an observation. I looked directly at him. I'm sure everything is perfectly legitimate, though I did find it interesting that one of your shell companies shares an address with a known money laundering operation, investigated by SWIC last year. Small world. Thomas, Safi hissed. What are you doing? Protecting what's mine? I said softly, then turned to Burgett. Your family has significant investments in financial services, correct? I imagine the last thing you'd want is association with a scandal. Regulatory scrutiny tends to spread like oil spills. I watched the calculation happen in Burgett's eyes. Family reputation versus her daughter's infatuation. Old money versus new scandal. Perhaps, Burgett said slowly, Jacob should focus on his own family gatherings rather than ours. We wouldn't want to complicate his business dealings with unnecessary attention. Jacob stood, fury and fear warring across his face. You have no idea what you're doing, Thomas. No idea who you're threatening. I know exactly what I'm doing, I replied. I'm removing poison from my life, starting with you. After Jacobi left humiliated and furious, Safi exploded. We fought on the beach under the endless summer twilight, her screaming about my cruelty, my manipulation, my inadequacy. I let her rage, watched her beautiful face contort with hatred, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. You've ruined everything, she sobbed finally, mascara streaking her cheeks. No, I corrected. I've simply stopped letting you ruin me. The divorce took 6 months. Danish law favored equitable division, and I documented every expense I'd covered while she finished her degree. Every loan I'd co-signed, every investment I'd made in our life together. I hired a shark of a lawyer from Randers who despised. Copenhagen elites. Safi got the apartment tie, didn't want the memories. I got my dignity and half our assets. More importantly, I'd sent the financial documentation about Jakob's projects to SGIK anonymously. The investigation that followed destroyed his development company and his family's investment firm. His name became synonymous with fraud in Copenhagen's business circles. Burgett never spoke to me again, but I'd seen the grudging respect in her eyes at our final mediation. I'd played their game and won using their rules. A year later, stood in my new apartment in Aarhus, watching snow fall over the harbor where my father used to dock his fishing boat. I'd returned home, taken a position managing Northern European logistics, and discovered peace in simplicity. My phone buzzed. A message from hell. Heard Safi's engaged again. Some consultant from Stockholm. Thought you should know. I deleted the message without responding. Safi was someone else's problem now. Someone else's cautionary tale about dismissing the wrong person's boundaries. Revenge hadn't been about destroying her. It had been about refusing to be destroyed. About understanding that sometimes love demands you walk away from people who laugh at your pain, who weaponize your loyalty, who mistake kindness for weakness. The snow continued falling, covering Aarhus in clean white silence. I poured coffee, opened my laptop, and began planning my next chapter I written entirely in my own words. For my own purposes, with no one's contempt, echoing in the margins, some bridges you burn. Others you simply stop maintaining until they collapse under their own rot. Either way, you walk forward into lighter country, carrying only what serves your future, leaving the rest to drown in its own consequences.